Welcome to the Farming Biogas Podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio on Rural Radio 147. This is episode 2 of our podcast series, all about anaerobic digestion. And when you think about anaerobic digestion, it gets thrown around a lot. But let's talk about what it is first. And on-farm biogas systems, they use anaerobic digestion to recycle livestock manure and crop residue. So this process produces biogas, which creates environmental and business opportunities for the farm. So anaerobic digestion creates a renewable source of energy like heat, electricity, natural gas that can be used on farm, or even better yet, sold to utilities to diversify a farm's income. It is episode 2. Today we are going to hear from Paul Klaesi. So he was the first farm in Ontario to have an on-farm biogas system. Currently, he has a 500 kilowatt digester running on 15,000 tons per year of dairy manure, corn silage, and off-farm material. He also sells power produced by the digester to Hydro One. Let's hear my conversation with Paul Klaesi of Fepro Farms near Cobden, Ontario. Hi, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us. So, Paul, why did you get started with biogas on your farm?
So we emigrated from Switzerland in the around 1990, and before that, actually, we started biogas in Switzerland on a small farm that was owned by my brother. I worked for hydrosillic at that time, and we started biogas in a very small way, and used the biogas that was then created in a boiler. So we didn't heat the system; we just used a low temperature digester, and we had some experience, and it was actually quite cool. When we emigrated to Canada in 1990, we didn't really have time to go right into it, but then 10 years later, when our farm was established, we felt it was time to go into it again, and that's when we built our first 50 kilowatt small system that was then also quite intense, studied by OMAFRA, and we had many engineers here, and because that system actually worked, we had about 150 kilowatt output a day, 120 to 150 kilowatt hours output a day from our, at that time, 80 milking cows, and some little material input from other sources, but very little. And so my brother was always interested in technology, and I, from my education and work in Switzerland, was clearly interested in generation, and so we started it in 2003, actually, here with the small system. Yeah.
How do you produce biogas in your farm? For example, what feedstocks do you use?
So we use mainly manure and off-farm material because we were quite early in the 2000s. I think we were the first, basically, in Canada doing biogas farm-based, and so we were actually approached from Ministry of Agriculture at that time if we would do some trials with off-farm material, a grease trap waste. And because we were quite early, we were able to sign a contract in 2007. And so we bring in roughly about 8,000 cubic meters of off-farm material and about 10,000 cubic meters of manure. And we also use about 3 tons of corn silage per day, so about 1,000 tons a year of corn silage.
What size is your anaerobic digester? Kind of try to put it in a bit of context for us. How many animals support the size of system that you have?
So the digester has a size of 2,500 cubic meters. It's a larger vessel. It was a manure pit that we converted, and we have a retention time of about 38 days. And so the animals that we milk is about 180 animals, so about 350 altogether, 380. And then the off-farm material I just mentioned to you before. That enters in also. Yeah.
Is there anything that makes your system of your anaerobic digester? Is there anything that makes it unique?
Well, I think what now some more people do is separating out white fibers for bedding. That's what we do. We enter the bedding into a robot on a track that is on the ceiling of the barn. We have a 300 or 400 foot long barn, and we have a track mounted on the ceiling, or not quite up there, but almost. And the feeder or the spreader goes a few times a day and spreads it on the beds of the cows. So we just go through once a day or twice a day for the milking cows and bed. Then the second thing we do is the actual cooler of the engine, of our 500 kVA engine, is installed between grain bins, between dryer grain bins. So we don't use energy anymore to dry. We use the heat from the generator to dry corn and beans. So we can dry about 350 ton in 10 days, roughly, and then we have to move it over and fill it again. So it saved us some money, and we also heat the calf barn, the milk house, 2 houses, and a large workshop. Everything is basically at the farm is heated by the engine of the biogas system.
And what do you do with the energy? The energy you're producing, where does it end up?
So we have a microfit or a fit contract. So it goes to the grid. About, I would say, roughly a bit more over 80%, and the rest is used at the farm for farm use and parasitic loads of mixing and so on. We have a quite good uptime, a bit more than 95%, maybe 98%, and also the output is usually above 60%, 60, 70, 90%. So we have a good percentage of the energy leaving the farm.
Oh, wow.
Around 80%, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's used on farm, but then if there's any excess, it goes into the grid.
Yes, I would say the farm use is below 20%, yes, of what we produce.
So aside from the revenue side of putting it onto the grid and getting some revenue that way, what are some of the other benefits for your farm operation that you've experienced with being a heavy participant in the biogas industry?
Yeah, I would say for us, our first goal was just to produce some energy and have somewhat fun with biogas, right? So that's how we started, and it became more serious, and so I mean the heating is something we really enjoy. We have had lots of things going with boilers and wood and stuff to heat before, and that's all gone. We plumping all the heat lines into these boilers, and we also have now automatic islanding and reconnection system. We have 4 milking robots, so if we have power failure, which is quite frequently here in our area, we disconnect automatically the grid, and the farm runs normal ahead until the grid is good again, and then we reconnect to the grid. So we don't have power failures anymore on the farm, which is a very good thing. Before we always had to run and connect the tractor generator, right? So we don't have to do that anymore. And what also I would say is a big advantage now, we use the manure. We have a large storage now. We don't bring out manure in the fall anymore. We only do it once a year in the spring before seeding, and we inject the manure in the ground with a drag hose system, and we have saved significantly on fertilizer through that, because we bring in the nutrients just into the growing season, and also the nitrogen. We don't have nitrogen loss like we used to have in the fall, and when we did it above, right, and now we just drag hose it in, and we feel it's a great improvement of our on-farm resources, included the off-farm material that is digested.
Yeah, the digestate, it's a little bit better odor than regular.
For sure.
Yeah, the neighbors probably don't mind that at all, do they?
Yeah, no, the manure business is really good, yeah. And also we see that the availability of the nutrients is better, and especially the and because we pull it in now has a significant advantage of being available for the plants, right, when it's needed, yeah.
So, Paul, we talked about manure and you mentioned plants. What sort of environmental benefits has your farm achieved by producing biogas?
Well, I would say, it's multi-layered really to talk about that. One big achievement, I think, is that the off-farm material that we use here now was before landfill in Quebec. So these 5,000 tons from especially one company we use had been landfilled. So can you imagine what happened there, right? It's just amazing how that was once a way of dealing with grease trap waste. And when we started, the government was very, very, very interested to divert that stream into digestion, in anaerobic digestion, and get rid of that CO2 that would have been produced, and methane gas. It depends on how it was converted. If it was anaerobic, it would be methane gas, which is so much more polluting than CO2, or if it would have been if it were used in composting, then it would have been CO2, right? And so right now, I think we do a large service to our community in digesting that material, and I would say our manure is very similar. We digest the manure, and when it goes to the field, it is basically ready to be adopted by the plants, right? So that is a big advantage of digestion. For me, it's a really nice, good circle that nature does for us, right? We take the sun energy and use it and digest it, and what is left over is fertilizer to be used up again, right? So it's a beautiful circle.
Yeah, well, beautiful circle indeed. And we've talked about some of the benefits, but let's talk maybe some of the financials now. And depending on what size of system you put in, there's a wide pendulum in terms of what some of the costs are. From $500,000 to multi-million-dollar investments. How do you pencil out your return on investment with your system?
Yeah, this is like you say, really a big question, because it comes down to I would say in the beginning, when you think about a biogas system, is what kind of material will I have? And that is really the big question. I think if I have only cows and no other material, then the system, even if you have 500 cows, you can maybe run a 150 kilowatt system. So it's not going to be a very large system, and the payback time will be probably 10, 12 years on a system like that. But if you have access to more potent material like grease trap waste, or there is a wide variety of waste that is quite potent or at least useful, then the calculation looks very different, right? And I think for us, through that we were able to make a 1-year contract on off-farm material in 2007, that helped us a lot. We have these 4,000 tons a year of grease trap waste and about 4,000 tons of less potent waste, which we actually charge a small dipping fee, not a big dipping fee, but the grease trap waste, we do not charge dipping fee. So that's how we handle it, because we are not quite in the city where the stuff is right available. So we handle it that way, that the good material, we do not charge tipping fees, because it gives us the return on energy, right? And I mean, I would say for us, the payback time was quite good. It was, I would say, between 5 and 7 years for our system. And we did not spare costs on the engine. And I think that's a very important equation in the whole scheme of things, because you don't want to have downtime. What is very important is uptime, output, and maintenance costs, right? So these things are all playing in your payback time. We have an uptime of over 95% so far. Our engine has 94,000 hours. It's soon time to replace it, and we are very pleased with the machine we chose. It was the most expensive at that time, but with our contacts to Europe, I was suggested to that we have to use this engine if we want to have uptime, and I think I'm pleased we did choose this engine. And I think that is, when you look at these costs of uptime and output and especially maintenance costs, then the payback time is really impacted by that. So I think don't buy a prototype, and don't buy a machine that you don't have service and so forth. Yeah, that's very important.
Good suggestions. And 5 to 7 year payback. That, I don't think anyone's going to wince at that. That's pretty good. What are some of the challenges, Paul, that you have had to tackle through this process, and how did you overcome them?
So our biggest challenge was the grid connection, because when we started biogas, Hydro One wasn't ready, or utility. They have never really done that stuff in 2000. We started in 2003 with a small system, and then 2007 with the larger system. And I mean, in our case, it came down to that we had to pay for about 3 clicks of 3-phase line. So we paid it ourselves, and Hydro One took it over for $1 at the end. So that's how it was solved in our case, because the government regulations at that time weren't really the same as they are today. That there is a cost sharing between the utility and the producer. But today we have much different hurdles. With everybody or on most of the places, Hydro One would today say we are full. We don't have any capacity left. Like it's here the same, and I know other friends who have the similar issue. And the new government has anyways cancelled all the contracts for now, or not cancelled, but stopped all the new contracting for fit, and I hope there is a new contract in the future. But I think the regulations were my biggest issue with contract with Hydro One, with just getting everything going. And when we built the digester, we did not have the standards that are available today. So that was a challenge we had. What is good practice to build a digester that is safe and good? And today we have made more rules, so that is taken care of a lot. But at the time we built the digester, that wasn't the case. And so at the end, I would say it worked out well. It's a challenge to build something that hasn't been built much before, but a lot of this has been taken care of today. So I would say a farmer who starts today has a lot more information to go back to and start. But the utility connection and so on is going to be still quite a challenge, I would think.
Well, Paul, there's farmers listening to this, and they're like, okay, I'm getting this. This sounds interesting. I need to consider this for my own farm. What words of advice would you have for those farmers that are considering getting a digester? And are there certain things they for sure should be focusing in on, like honing in on, to make sure they increase their probability of success?
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned before the input materials. That is for me before we start calculating. This is actually for me the most important thing, right? So what do I have to digest? How much energy is in it, right? And so that is a big one. And if we can see that there is a potential with the energy that is available to me, I think the next time would be, am I able to work with technology? Am I afraid if a machine stands still and is it okay if I have to have somebody maybe closer, further away that will take care of that machine? So I think it's a question between economics and, on the other side, also my potential of dealing with technology and mechanics. Can I? Is that my thing? It's not every farmer's thing. I mean, we have many people here, and some jump in it, and some are quite afraid of bringing something like that to their farm, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a personal thing, and but like I say, the first thing is economics before you start, and make sure you have the inputs you need and the connection for sure. Yeah.
So, Paul, what's the one thing you've learned about biogas that really surprised you, or that you did not expect before you got into? You've been doing this for a long time, so to go back to the very beginning. But what's the one thing you've learned through all this?
There needs to be an understanding of a backup plan, and so I had to learn that we can't always 100% depend on a machine. Although it's very good, but nothing lasts forever, and nothing has no hiccups. So we learned that. What was very surprising to me is that we don't have to mix the end storage anymore. The manure before, when we went out in the spring to bring out our manure, we had to mix for a day or two with a quite heavy mixer. We had straw bedding, and there was a 2-3 foot crust on top. Now we go in with the mixer, there's nothing there, right? I mean, it's just amazing. That is something that I feel really good about it. For us, we can go and we don't have to mix. And it's a saving that way. We burn quite a bit of fuel, and also now since we inject the manure, we don't use 2 tanks anymore to drive on the fields. So that is not a direct thing about manure digestion, but it made much more sense with the digester storing the manure, bring it out only in the spring and injecting it, and have the nutrients quite right there available. I think it makes a lot of sense when you digest. So it's for us now we're doing that almost 20 years or 17 years, and we see the benefits of growing crops with digested manure over a long time. So I'm really pleased about that.
And Paul, if you could just start fresh, do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I would build today 2 digesters. We have only one large one, and I think that's something that might come in the future, that we would build a second one. I believe that there is still some potential in the effluent we store in the end storage, so that we still produce some gas there. I would look for 2. I think also what has not been done 100% perfectly in our system is the calculation of heat and cooling capacity. In the winter, we always have to watch that everything, the digest is nicely up on the temperature. In the cold winter, it's -20. And in the summer, we have sometimes issues with cooling capacity when we run full steam. So the calculation of cooling and heating is something that is quite extreme in Canada. It's much easier in Europe. We don't have that extreme weather. So that's something I would view more strictly, that there is some overcapacity. Otherwise, I think it's important that two people are in it, that not everything hangs on one person. I think you want to go on holidays and so on. So it's nice if somebody else understands the system when you are gone. And that's about what I think it's important for me today. Yeah.
Well, hey, Paul, thank you so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it and look forward to the next time we get to chat.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Farming Biogas Podcast. I want to encourage you, if you want to learn more, go to farmingbiogas.ca. And also, I want to thank our sponsor, Canadian Biogas Association. Thank you so much for bringing awareness of this. I think this is a trend that we're going to see a lot more of. There's going to be a lot of interest in anaerobic digestion. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us here on the Farming Biogas Podcast. I'm Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio on Rural Radio 147.